Hello and welcome to the Debrief. I'm Stephanie Ramos. It's exactly a year since the school shooting at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School, where 17 people lost their lives there in Florida. Today, they're being remembered. We're going to take you there to Parkland. Also, we're waiting on Congress to vote on a border deal, but will the president sign off on it? And also the final push on an ISIS stronghold in Syria. We'll have the very latest on that. We'll have all of those stories plus more. But first, here are your headlines.
And no charges for Britain's Prince Philip after his recent car crash. That's what prosecutors in Great Britain are saying today. The 97-year-old husband of Queen Elizabeth was driving an SUV that hit another car so hard the SUV flipped. 2 women were hurt in last month's accident. A few days ago, Philip agreed to give up his license and stop driving.
Water supplies.
A new study warns teenagers who smoke marijuana are more likely to suffer depression later in life. Researchers found teen marijuana use was associated with a 50% increase in the risk for suicidal thoughts during adulthood. Musician Ryan Adams is facing allegations of psychological abuse and manipulation from ex-wife Mandy Moore and several other women. Moore, who stars in This Is Us, tells the New York Times that Adams was so controlling during their marriage that he hurt her singing career. One woman accused Adams of engaging in sexually inappropriate behavior with her when she was just a teenager. Others say he tricked them into thinking he would help their careers.
A once-in-a-lifetime sight captured by a photographer in Kenya, photographing a black panther in the wild 4 days after setting up cameras near some leopard tracks. Some believe these are the closest confirmed images of a black panther in 100 years.
We want to take you to Parkland, Florida. A moment of silence was held there this morning for the 17 people who lost their lives 1 year ago today in that school shooting there in Parkland. ABC's Victor Okendo is there. And Victor, you've been there all morning. Describe that moment for us. What's the mood like?
It was definitely powerful, Stephanie. We saw security guards, students, people in the community. They were just walking by. They all stopped, looked at the school, bowed their heads in that moment of silence. I want to show you something real quick. There are these stones. We found them all over this area close to Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School. They all have little messages on them. This one says, MSD strong, spread love. And there's even a message on the back. This one just says, I am just another human being. This community just impressive once again on the 1-year anniversary of this massacre. It was that moment of silence, 10:17 a.m. across Broward County, even the state really, so many schools joining in, many reading off the names of all the victims, the 17 students and staff members who were gunned down. Here in Parkland, there are events planned throughout the day. There are ceremonies, community service projects, an interfaith mass. There's a lot more. It is a somber day, but it's also a day of healing. Stephanie?
And Victor, a lot of those students have turned into activists fighting for stricter gun laws, making it their mission. And in this past year, 76 laws have actually been passed. Just last night, the House Judiciary Committee voting on one of these bills to enforce stricter gun laws. Now, we understand that some of these students, Victor, are choosing not to speak out in that way today.
Those kids, always so impressive. A lot of them were the ones who planned the March for Life rallies. They have decided to go on a media blackout, not just social media where they've done so much good work, but we're talking about all media here. They will not be talking to anyone for 3 days, or 4 days, I should say, and that is in respect to the victims. That's why they won't be speaking with anyone, Stephanie. You mentioned all those laws that have been passed, 76, some of them banning bump stocks, regulating ammunition size, and there's one law in Florida that was passed raising the minimum age to purchase a firearm to 21 years old and the waiting period to 3 days.
And Victor, I was there on the ground last year when the shooting first happened, and I remember speaking to a young lady, a high school student, who says she was in that classroom, in one of the classrooms where the shooter opened fire. She was hiding, just fearing that she was about to lose her life, and just hearing her relive those moments, it was very emotional, and I can only imagine what those students are going through today, kind of reliving those same moments. You were also there on the ground covering this extensively. What sticks out to you the most from your time there on the ground a year ago and today?
Well, Stephanie, you hear so many stories like that. I mean, just minutes ago, we walked over to a little memorial right here at the front of the school, and we saw a student who came with his guitar. He wasn't playing his guitar. He just brought it because he lost a friend who used to like listening to him play. For us here, it's difficult anytime that we come back. I remember pulling up just hours after the shooting. We saw students running away from the school, parents desperately searching for their children. Everyone in this community wondering how this could have happened here. But I have to say, the way that everybody here in Parkland and Broward County, the way that they have banded together in the wake of this, and of course, those students facing this horrible tragedy have stood up, taken on the challenge, and have not stopped trying to enact change. That is kind of the lasting memory for me here, Stephanie.
All right, Victor, thank you so much for sharing. That's definitely a difficult year for those families, the friends of those victims, and the community as well. But it's good to see them coming together today to remember those victims. Victor, again, thank you so much. So we want to take you overseas now. Our ABC's James Longman is in eastern Syria. Overnight, large numbers of ISIS fighters surrendered, but large pockets of fighters are still there on the ground. James has the latest.
Hi, Stephanie. Yeah, we are in eastern Syria watching as we get ever closer to the on-the-ground defeat of ISIS. And overnight, large numbers of ISIS fighters surrendered from the last remaining stronghold in a town just south of here. But fierce pockets of resistance do remain. The casualties among coalition soldiers, that's Kurdish fighters along with their Arab allies and US-backed Air Force, are in an intense battle for the tiny town of Baghouz. That is all that's left of an area of ISIS control that was once about the size of Indiana. Civilians are trying to escape, but ISIS fighters are picking them off. And at present, we understand about 500 people are trapped in one part of that town as the Syrian Democratic Forces are trying to negotiate their release. Millions have been made homeless in this war. I spent the day yesterday at a refugee camp, and I met one family who had escaped from one of the ISIS towns that now lie very close to that front line. With no food or medicine, 6-month-old twins and Mohammed and Samira, you can see them here, they were close to starvation. Their mother, she said she only had grass to eat and she wasn't producing enough milk, and said finally that they had a choice. They could die there of hunger or they could be killed trying to run, and that's what they did. Like so many others, they're longing to go home, but where to? That's the big question. Even without ISIS in control, most of the towns they held here now lie in ruins. Donald Trump has already declared victory against ISIS and said that would mean US troops, and there are about 2,000 of them here, could also go home. But the US Defense Department says thousands of fleeing jihadis are still here, all across this region. So once US troops do go home, it's feared those jihadis could regroup, able to launch attacks here and abroad. Stephanie?
Such an intense time there in eastern Syria. James, thank you so much for that. Let's move over to Washington, where we're waiting on Congress to vote on a border deal that the president still hasn't said whether he's going to sign off on it. ABC's Karen Travers is at the White House breaking it all down for us. Karen, we know the president has been tweeting this morning, not about the border deal, more about Russia, but what is the latest there on this border deal?
Well, yesterday we heard the president say that he was looking for landmines in the legislation. That's how he put it. Things that might get inserted last minute that he would not sign on to. This bill is 1,000 pages, Stephanie, and it was released overnight. So you can imagine Capitol Hill and here at the White House, there's a scramble now to read it, make sure that there wasn't something put in or taken out that they wanted included. Right now, it looks like the Senate will vote first, followed by the House later today. And certainly all signs from Capitol Hill are the president has to sign this. This is the best deal, and this is the only deal, the only thing that they're going to look at to avert a government shutdown at the end of tomorrow night. But again, President Trump has not said yes or no. We expect we'll see something perhaps from him today. Maybe that will come in a tweet. As for that landmine issue, which he brought up yesterday, one thing that the White House was not happy about was the idea of putting in a provision in this bill that would put back pay to federal contractors. We all know that the federal workers who did not get paychecks during the last shutdown did ultimately get their back pay, but it's different for contract workers. And Stephanie, these are people like janitors or security guards, low-wage workers who get their money through federal contracts. They were left out in the cold with this bill that the House and Senate are considering today. The provision to give them back pay was not included.
All right, Karen, thank you so much for that, for those details. We're going to stick with Washington, and former acting FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe is speaking out for the first time since his firing from the Bureau, talking about President Trump and the Russia probe with CBS. Here's a bit of that interview.
I was speaking to the man who had just run for the presidency and won the election for the presidency, and who might have done so with the aid of the government of Russia, our most formidable adversary on the world stage. And that was something that troubled me greatly.
How long was it after that you decided to start the obstruction of justice and counterintelligence investigations involving the president?
I think the next day I met with the team investigating the Russia cases, and I asked the team to go back and conduct an assessment to determine where are we with these efforts and what steps do we need to take going forward. I was very concerned that I was able to put the Russia case on absolutely solid ground in an indelible fashion, that were I removed quickly or reassigned or fired, that the case could not be closed or vanish in the night without a trace.
We want to bring in ABC's Jack Date from our Washington Bureau. And Jack, this is a big deal. We are again hearing from McCabe. We haven't heard from him in a while. But remind our viewers who McCabe is. We know he's the former FBI Deputy Director, but also why this matters that he's now speaking out.
That's right. So after James Comey was fired by President Trump, Andrew McCabe took over the FBI. He became the acting director of the FBI at a very, very dynamic time. I mean, there was a lot going on, and the Justice Department and the FBI had to decide how to proceed with whether or not to investigate this whole Russia matter. And McCabe, obviously, as you heard in a 60 Minutes interview, was pushing hard that they needed to do so. Eventually, the special counsel Robert Mueller, the former FBI director, was appointed by Rod Rosenstein.
And in the meantime, a judge just ruled yesterday, moving on to Paul Manafort, he just ruled yesterday that former Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort continued to lie to investigators even after signing that plea deal with the special counsel. This is also another bombshell coming out of Washington. Tell us why this is a big deal.
Well, so Paul Manafort did agree to plead guilty. He said he did all the things that the government had charged, and part of that agreement meant he had to cooperate with the government. He had to be debriefed by investigators. He had to talk to them and explain sort of what he did and answer their questions. The Justice Department, the special counsel's office, and the FBI said that he wasn't truthful, and they cited 5 areas that they thought that he lied. The judge agreed with 3 of those areas, and a critical one was his conversations or his communications with a guy named Konstantin Kilimnik. He's another figure in this that's been indicted. He is somebody who's suspected of having ties to Russian intelligence, and so him not being truthful about that goes to the heart of the investigation, as prosecutors said in court.
And that story continues. All right, Jack Date in our Washington Bureau. Thank you so much for joining us for the debrief. All right, we've got some breaking news just coming in out of Chicago. Jussie Smollett, the actor from Empire who says he was attacked in Chicago not too long ago. Police are saying that 2 suspects have been identified in that alleged attack. Those 2 suspects, you've seen these images before, these 2 shadowy figures that has been playing over and over again when we've talked about this incident that took place there in Chicago. Jussie Smollett sat down with our Robin Roberts to talk about his ordeal, to talk about this attack. Take a listen.
The police have gone through a lot of video, and they were able to capture an image of 2 people of interest. Have you seen that image? Mm-hmm. And do you believe that they could possibly be the attackers?
I do.
What is it about their size, or why do you feel that they could possibly be?
Because I was there. I mean, that, for me, when that was released, I was like, okay, we're getting somewhere.
How long did this all
It felt like minutes, but it probably was like 30 seconds, honestly. I can't tell you, honestly. I noticed the rope around my neck, and I started screaming. And I said, there's a rope around my neck. I'm pissed off.
What is it that has you so angry? Is it the attackers?
It's the attackers, but it's also the attacks. It's like, You know, at first it was a thing of like, listen, if I tell the truth, then that's it, because it's the truth. Then it became a thing of like, oh, how can you doubt that? Like, how do you not believe that? It's the truth.
We want to bring in ABC's Stephanie Wash, who is in Chicago. She's got the latest on this new development. And Stephanie, this is a huge development. This is something that Jussie Smollett, his fans, his friends, his family, that they've been waiting for.
For sure. Chicago police are confirming that police have identified the two people in the surveillance images that we saw released, it was just a week ago now. They are calling them persons of interest still. They said that police used technology to actually track the movements of the two individuals using cameras, public transportation records, and also through corroborating some of the information that was provided by Jussie Smollett himself. And while those two persons of interest have not been charged with a crime, there is no evidence they're involved in the physical attack at this time. Police say they do now know who they are, and they have brought them in for questioning since they were people who were at the location of the attack.
That is incredible. Now, have they, and I know these are the early stages of this part in the investigation, but have they said that they'll announce anything else later on today? Any press conferences scheduled? Anything else that we may learn about these two individuals later today?
So no word of any press conferences. I did speak with the police spokesman when he did confirm it, and he says, this is a serious ongoing investigation. Police are not revealing too many details, but of course, they are letting us know today that they did identify those two persons of interest that were, in pretty grainy surveillance images. So it took a lot of police work to track them down, and we'll see what comes out of questioning.
All right, Stephanie Wash in Chicago, thank you so much for your time. We want to move over to California now, where ABC's Jim Patton is there to tell us more about the winter weather that is slamming that area. Hey there, Jim.
Hey, Stephanie, that's a good way to describe it. We are in a soggy San Diego today. We are right now in the community of Carlsbad, about 20 miles north of San Diego proper, and what you're looking at there is a driving range that has basically been transformed into a lake. And as you pan over to the right, the water gets deeper, and then it heads into what is known as Buena Vista Creek, which runs along the side of a freeway, the 78. You can see the cars going by in the background there. It has flooded a portion of the freeway, so that's closed off the right-hand lane and one of the on-ramps. Also, we just learned from a police officer that stopped by that there's a homeless encampment in that direction that they fear is going to be completely flooded out. So we saw a fire truck there a little earlier, and they are apparently working on getting those people out of there safely. We get the normal stuff that you would expect. Californians don't have to drive in rain a whole lot, and we got a lot more wrecks on days like this, and that's what we're seeing today. And in fact, we are, after we're done chatting here with you, heading to breaking news. We've just heard that a fire truck is overturned northeast of us, and that at least 3 firefighters have been injured in that. Stephanie?
Oh, no. Well, we'll let you get to that breaking news. Jim, thank you so much. Live from San Diego. Thanks for joining us for the debrief. We want to turn to ABC's Matt Gutman, who is also in California tracking this weather. Matt.
Hi, Stephanie. We're at Agora Hills. Now, this entire area was engulfed in flames in the most recent fire. That was the Woolsey fire. And we actually saw this bridge here during that time completely melted by that fire. Now, this atmospheric river, the Pineapple Express, whatever you want to call it, it is 2,000 miles long, and it's just going to pummel this part of California with enormous rain. We're told to expect possibly 50% of the annual average rainfall in a single day. That's how much moisture is coming down. You can see what is normally pretty much a dry creek bed just filled right now. And the concern is that the debris from bridges like this and other fires is just going to go downstream, endangering people. And that's why we're seeing so many evacuation orders around California, especially in Sausalito, just north of San Francisco and Marin County, where homes have been sliding off the hill. That's not a burn scar area. That is just an area that has seen so much moisture that the ground is giving way. Expect more of those today. We're also seeing flash floods, additional mudslides, but the biggest concern is for these burn scar areas because The ground is already saturated here. This part of California has gotten so much more rain than average over the past couple of months. It simply can't tolerate anymore. That's why we're seeing so much concern from first responders and officials here. One more area of concern for them, Stephanie, is what they're calling evacuation fatigue. So many people have gone through what seems this endless cycle of fire evacuation, then rain evacuation. It costs money every time these people have to leave their homes. And right now we're hearing a lot of people are just staying put, hoping to ride this out. Officials are concerned that they could endanger themselves or even first responders if they don't leave when ordered. But, you know, obviously you can understand these people making a personal decision like this. Again, much more of this rain forecast all day long to pummel all of Southern California. We saw up to 9 inches north of here. Not going to see that much in this part, but 2, 3, 5, 6 inches possible from here to about 100 miles eastward. So stay tuned. Stephanie.
Incredible to see that road there just broken up. Thanks, Matt, for that report. So much rain and wind causing some major problems there in California, while other states are dealing with major snow. Let's check in with ABC's chief meteorologist, Ginger Z.
Stephanie, thank you. Let's go ahead and start with a look at all of the water. So much of it pouring straight at the West Coast, and that's why we see flash flood pictures like this from Sonoma County. There's actually more than 9 inches of rain that fell in and around the San Francisco Bay Area, but it wasn't just rain, it was wind. Up to 70-mile-per-hour gusts, taking down trees, people really being impacted by this storm. Now a lot of that has the flow has moved to the south. So Southern California, right along the Mexican border, actually, we've got flood watches, flood advisories, and you could see 2 to 3 inches at the coast, up to 8 inches inland in some of those mountainous areas. And look at just north of Phoenix. This is this afternoon. So we're going to still see, it's how fast this rain falls. And if you're in a place like the Cranston Fire burn scar, just north and east of San Diego, that could be an issue. You could end up seeing mudslides from that. And even some of the peaks there could get a little bit of snow. You see the sprinkle of gray and white. Into the Rockies, you'll end up with several more feet of snow in the Sierra for sure. Speaking of snow and above normal snow, 2 feet above normal in Marquette, Michigan, 157 inches so far this season, because you will inevitably get more. So let's go then to what the next, through early next week looks like. There's actually another storm that's going to come through, and it dips a little farther south than the last couple have. So even St. Louis looking for what could be another snowfall for them. Happy Valentine's Day, Stephanie.
Ginger, thank you. All right, so we want to show you this video. It was a really close call for Oscar nominee Regina King. So yeah, regular basketball game, right? The Knicks are playing. Watch this. Regina is right there in the front row. She was sitting courtside at Madison Square Garden and almost gets crushed by 76ers star Joel Embiid. Thankfully for her, he missed. There it is in slow-mo. He landed on a scorekeeper who we're told is totally fine. But King was, of course, having some fun with this, but you could see him there kind of on the ground. What a close call. This is my fear with sitting courtside, even though that never happens and has never happened. But so scary to be so close. But Regina King, again, having some fun with this. She tweeted this saying, "Thank you, God and Joel Embiid, for your athletic abilities. Crisis averted." Woo, too close. All right, well, thank you so much for watching The Debrief. I'm Stephanie Ramos, and don't forget you can watch our political show, The Briefing Room, which starts at 3:30 Eastern Time, and also check out World News Prime at 8 o'clock. And of course, remember to download the ABC News app. Thanks for joining us.